Did you know that the beard of Padre Pio of Pietrelcina, one of the great saints of the 20th century, was found incorrupt? Or that the body of Saint Thérèse of Lisieux, after nearly 100 years, appears as if she were asleep? In this video, we'll unveil 12 incorrupt bodies that defy all scientific explanation. Let's watch it. It's fascinating. Padre Pio. Despite passing away in 1968, over 55 years ago, his body remains surprisingly well preserved. Scientists cannot explain this natural phenomenon. His skin, hair, and nails remain intact, leading to the belief that it is a miracle. The story of Padre Pio, or Saint Pio of Pietrelcina, is fascinating and full of extraordinary events that have made him one of the most revered saints of the 20th century. Born as Francesco Forgione on May 25, 1887, in Pietrelcina, Italy, he showed a deep inclination toward religious life from a young age. At 15, he entered the novitiate of the Capuchin friars and took the name Brother Pio. From an early age, Francesco felt a profound call to God. He joined the Capuchin order and took the name Pio. His life of prayer, penance, and sacrifice soon caught the attention of those around him. Padre Pio had an intense devotion to the Eucharist and the Virgin Mary, but his spiritual journey became even more extraordinary when, in 1918, he received the stigmata of Christ on his hands, feet, and side. These bleeding wounds caused him immense pain, but he accepted them as a divine gift for the redemption of souls. Padre Pio not only bore physical stigmata, he also possessed other mystical gifts. Bilocations, the ability to be in two places at once, amazed both him and those who knew him. During confession, he saw into the hearts of penitents, revealing their hidden sins and guiding them toward conversion. His prophetic visions and communication with angels and saints were part of his daily life. Padre Pio's confessional was always full. He spent hours listening to people's struggles, sins, and sorrows. His words brought comfort, healing, and conversion. Many experienced profound transformations after confessing to him. His love for souls was palpable, and his intercession felt like a direct bridge to God. Padre Pio passed away on September 23, 1968, at the age of 81. His funeral drew crowds of mourners, but no one imagined that his body would defy the natural process of decomposition. When exhumed in 2008, it was discovered that his remains were remarkably preserved. Skin, hair, and nails intact. Scientists could not explain this phenomenon. The Church considers it a miracle, a sign of divine grace and Padre Pio's holiness. In 2002, Pope John Paul II canonized Saint Pio of Pietrelcina. Santa Bernadette Suberus, the incorrupt body of Saint Bernadette, is one of the most well-known cases of incorruptibility in Catholic tradition. After her death in 1879, her body was exhumed 3 times as part of the beatification and canonization process, each time found remarkably well preserved. Saint Bernadette was a young French peasant girl who became a saint of the Catholic Church. She was born on January 7, 1844, in Lourdes, France, and became famous for her visions of the Virgin Mary at the Massabielle Grotto near Lourdes, starting in 1858. At 14 years old, she was poor and illiterate, yet her heart burned with devotion to the Virgin Mary and the Rosary. One day, while gathering firewood near the grotto of Massabielle, something extraordinary happened. Bernadette, frail and sickly, stayed behind as her sister and another girl crossed a river. Near the grotto, she heard a mysterious noise and felt a wind enveloping her. There, in the shadows, a luminous figure materialized. The Virgin Mary. The Virgin was dressed in white with a blue mantle and held a rosary in her hands. Her bare feet rested on golden roses. Bernadette, astonished, began to pray the rosary. The Virgin, in silence, passed the beads through her fingers. As Bernadette prayed the Our Fathers and Hail Marys, the Virgin joined her in prayer. The girl felt not fear, but a deep desire to forever contemplate the Lady. When she returned home, her mother did not believe her account, but Bernadette did not give up. The Virgin called her back to the grotto. In the third apparition, the Virgin asked Bernadette to return for 15 consecutive days. She spoke in her Gascon dialect, using the formal you. The Virgin promised that she would be happy in the other world. Bernadette remained steadfast in fulfilling the tasks entrusted to her, such as asking the priest to build a chapel and even discovering water from a spring that emerged when she dug in the mud, guided by the Virgin. Initially met with skepticism and criticism by ecclesiastical authorities, Bernadette's humility and perseverance eventually won acceptance from many. The Massabielle Grotto became a place of pilgrimage, and the Chapel of the Immaculate Conception was built in compliance with the Virgin's request. After the apparitions, she entered the congregation of the Sisters of Charity of Nevers. There, she lived a life of sacrifice, caring for the sick and embracing the simplicity of religious life. Her cheerful demeanor and dedication to the poorest made her a beacon of love. Despite her health weakened by a knee tumor and pulmonary tuberculosis, her joyful spirit and love for the poor remained undiminished. She passed away on April 16, 1879, at the age of 35. Her body was initially buried in the convent garden in the St. Joseph Chapel. However, the story of her repose is extraordinary, marked by 3 exhumations that confirmed the astonishing incorruptibility of her body. Today, in the reliquary within the chapel of the St. Gildard Convent in Nevers, she rests in peace and can be visited by the faithful. St. John Vianney. Whoever does not have time to spend for God wastes their time. St. John Vianney, known as the Holy Curé of Ars, was born in 1786 and ordained a priest in 1815. His life was marked by profound devotion and a fervent desire to save souls, leading him to be appointed parish priest in the small village of Ars in 1818. Despite austerity and direct attacks from the devil, he maintained remarkable patience and spiritual peace, becoming the living image of a priest seeking the heart of Jesus. For 40 years, St. John Vianney spent long hours in the confessional, attending to penitents seeking forgiveness for their sins. He would sometimes spend up to 18 hours a day hearing confessions, sustaining himself on bread and potatoes alone. His dedication and love for reconciliation with God earned him the title of the Holy Curé of Ars. In addition to his ministry in the confessional, St. John Vianney also founded the Providence Institute, which cared for orphans, and he visited the sick and the poorest families. He restored the local church and organized patronal feasts. The devil harassed the Holy Curé of Ars with nocturnal noises and even set his bed on fire to disturb his ministry. Despite this, St. John continued his work, trusting in divine protection. His devotion to St. Philomena was notable. He built a sanctuary in her honor and promised 100 masses on his deathbed. During one of these masses, he fell into ecstasy and attributed his healing to her intercession. This unshakable faith led him to receive a special gift of expelling demons. After his death on August 4, 1859, St. John Vianney's figure stands as a marvel. Like other saints, his body defies the logic of decay, presenting a wonderful state of incorruptibility. Safeguarded in a glass reliquary in the Basilica of Ars, Vianney appears to rest in an eternal sleep, emanating serenity for countless visitors. His nearly undisturbed body serves as a tangible testament to his holiness and to the divine mysteries of faith. Through this inexplicable phenomenon, St. John Vianney endures as a beacon illuminating the transformative power of unwavering faith and devotion, celebrated reverently by the Church and its followers. St. John Vianney was canonized by Pope Pius V in 1925 and proclaimed the patron saint of priests. His feast day is celebrated on August 4th, which is also observed as the Day of Priests. Here's another of his quotes. "Our faults are a grain of sand beside the great mountain of God's mercy." St. John Bosco. St. John Bosco, also known as Don Bosco, was born on August 16, 1815, in Castelnuovo d'Asti, Italy. His mother, Margherita Occhiena, provided him with a solid Christian education, marking the beginning of this saint's extraordinary life. Gifted with exceptional intelligence and skills, he showed a passion for organizing games and religious activities among his peers from a young age. Born in 1815 in Castelnuovo d'Asti, Italy, Don Bosco grew up in a humble family. From an early age, he felt a strong religious vocation and dedicated himself to helping children and young people in difficult situations. He founded the Salesian Congregation, a religious order dedicated to the education and training of youth. Don Bosco believed in the importance of holistic education, which included not only academic knowledge, but also moral and spiritual formation. He established schools, oratories, and workshops for underprivileged youth, providing them with opportunities to grow and develop. One of the most notable aspects of his life was his relationship with young people. Don Bosco was affectionately called the father of the young. His approach was preventive. Instead of punishing, he preferred to prevent problems through education and love. His motto was, "Reason, religion, and love." Don Bosco was also a visionary. He had prophetic dreams that inspired his mission. One of his dreams predicted the expansion of the Salesian congregation and its impact worldwide. After his death in 1888, his body was buried in the Basilica of Mary Help of Christians in Turin, Italy. Despite the years that have passed, his body remains intact without signs of decay. This phenomenon, known as incorruptibility, is a testament to his holiness and connection with the divine. His face reflects the peace and serenity that characterized his life dedicated to serving the young. Saint Katherine Labouré. Katherine Labouré, born in France in 1806, lived a life marked by humility and devotion. Orphaned at the age of 9, she entrusted her care to the Virgin Mary, who accepted her plea. Despite the responsibilities in her father's household, Katherine longed to become a nun from a young age and always found time for prayer. Katherine had a dream in which an elderly priest called her at the end of a Eucharist. While visiting the Sisters of Charity of Châtillon, she saw a portrait of the elderly man from her dream. It was Saint Vincent de Paul, the founder of the congregation, which Katherine took as a confirmation of her vocation. At the age of 24, she was able to join the community. Her connection with the Virgin Mary was manifested in an extraordinary way in 1830. On the eve of the feast of St. Vincent, the Blessed Virgin appeared to her, revealing future events, including the creation of the miraculous medal. The Virgin showed Katherine the design of the medal with the inscriptions, "O Mary, conceived without sin, pray for us who have recourse to thee." She promised abundant graces to those who wore the medal with confidence. The miraculous medal spread miraculously, and numerous wonders surrounded it, such as the reduction of a cholera epidemic in Paris. After her death in 1876, her body was buried in the Basilica of the Daughters of Charity in Paris. 56 years later, during the beatification process, her body was exhumed and found to be incorrupt. Although her garments were corroded by moisture, her body remained intact. Today, her body rests in the Chapel of the Apparitions at Rue du Bac in Paris. Saint Rita of Cashia. Saint Rita of Cashia, known as the Saint of the Impossible, was born in May 1381 in Roccaporena, a remote village in the Apennine Mountains of Italy. Daughter of Antonio Mancini and Amata Ferri, nicknamed the Peacemakers of Jesus Christ, she grew up in a time of wars and conflicts, where political solutions seemed insufficient to solve the world's problems. Raised in the fear of God by her devout parents, Rita respected paternal authority and abandoned her desire to enter the convent to marry Paolo Mancini, a violent young man. Rita's married life was marked by kindness and patience, eventually changing her husband's heart, though she couldn't prevent his tragic death at the hands of past enemies. After her husband's death, Saint Rita prayed to God to save her sons' souls by calling them to his kingdom, thus preventing them from staining their souls with a desire to avenge their father's death. Widowed and childless, Rita sought to enter the Augustinian convent in Cashia, but her request was initially denied. With courage, she prayed to her patron saints and experienced a miracle. Saint John the Baptist, Saint Augustine, and Saint Nicholas of Tolentino carried her to the convent, opening the doors so she could wear the Augustinian habit. In the convent, Rita devoted herself to penance, prayer, and love for the crucified Christ. During an ecstasy, she received a stigmata, a wound on her forehead, representing the crown of thorns of Jesus Christ. Though the wound would close, it reopened every morning and began to emit a miraculous rose fragrance. Her fame for holiness spread beyond Cashia, and her prayers resulted in miraculous healings and conversions. Saint Rita of Cashia died in the monastery in 1457 and was canonized in 1900, leaving a legacy of faith, patience, and devotion to God amid life's adversities. Her body remains incorrupt in a basilica in Cashia, Italy, which bears her name. The body is housed within a glass urn and can be visited by the faithful and tourists. Saint Clare of Assisi. Saint Clare of Assisi, born in Italy in 1193 or 1194, led an extraordinary life marked by devotion, poverty, and the founding of the Poor Clares. Coming from a distinguished family, her father and mother instilled in her profound Christian values. At the age of 18, inspired by the evangelical fervor of Saint Francis of Assisi, she decided to consecrate her life to God. Under the guidance of Saint Francis, Clare left her home and received the habit at the chapel of the Porciuncola. Facing opposition from her relatives, she entered the Benedictine monastery of St. Paul of the Abbesses. Later, St. Francis moved her to the convent of Sant'Angelo in Panzo, where she was joined by her sister Agnes. Clare lived according to the Franciscan ideal, renouncing material possessions and leading the sisters in a life of radical poverty at the convent of San Damiano, next to the church restored by St. Francis. There, the initial group of poor ladies, known as the Poor Clares, was established. For 40 years, Clare led the convent of nuns at San Damiano, known for her austerity, charity, and piety. It is said that her prayers repelled the Saracens who were besieging Assisi. St. Clare wrote the Form of Life and later the Franciscan rule adapted for religious women. In 1253, after her death, a papal document approved the rule. She was canonized in 1255. Her body was initially buried next to St. Francis for 7 years. In 1260, it was moved beneath the main altar, where it remained for nearly 6 centuries. Discovered incorrupt on September 23, 1850, after 8 nights of work, her exact tomb can still be seen in the crypt. The saint's body is displayed in a gilded bronze urn. Her face and hands are covered with wax to preserve her incorrupt state. Saint Vincent de Paul. In a corner of Gascony in the year 1581, Vincent de Paul was born into a peasant family. Although his youth was spent among the fields, his sharp intelligence did not go unnoticed by a benefactor who gave him the opportunity to study. At just 19 years old, in 1600, he was ordained a priest, obtaining his licentiate in theology in 1604. Despite opening a private school, he was beset by debts and, during a journey from Marseille to Narbonne, was captured by pirates and sold into slavery in Tunis. His freedom was regained thanks to his owner's conversion 2 years later. In 1612, Vincent took charge of the parish of Clichy, where he formed a relationship with Cardinal Pierre de Bérulle. His experience as an educator of the children of the Marquise de Gondi revealed the vast differences between the rich and the poor, marking a turning point in his life. The Marquise de Gondi funded a preaching mission, but the lack of support led Vincent to work in the parish of Châtillon-le-Dombes, where the hardships of the peasants deeply moved him. In 1617, the Vincentian Charity was born, an organized response to circumstantial misery. This initial gesture, helping a needy family, evolved into a network of solidarity. Vincent understood that charity needed structure and, in 1633, founded the Daughters of Charity, women dedicated to active service. The Ladies of Charity, for their part, contributed financially to charitable works, notably in the opening of a hospital in 1634. Vincent did not limit himself to material charity. His concern for the formation of the clergy led him to found the Congregation of the Mission in 1618, later known as the Lazarists. His spiritual legacy, embodied in the Regulae, resonates in charitable action and priestly formation. He died in 1660, leaving as his testament a charity without barriers, based on universal love. After his death, his heart was placed in an urn in the Mother House of the Daughters of Charity in Paris, where his body is also preserved. Since then, there has been a devotion to his heart, called the Heart of the Father of the Poor. Saint Margaret Mary Alacoque. In the picturesque lands of Burgundy, where history blends with devotion, a girl destined to be the messenger of a divine love was born on July 22, 1647. Saint Margaret Mary Alacoque, whose fate intertwines with the mysteries of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, led a life marked by heavenly revelations and spiritual commitment. From her childhood in the village of Hautcourt, Margaret experienced loss and suffering, but found solace in her deep connection with God. Her spiritual journey led her to the monastery of Paray-le-Monial in 1671, where, during the feast of St. John the Evangelist in 1673, she had the privilege of experiencing the first of Jesus's visible revelations. This heavenly encounter, repeated every first Friday of the month for 2 years, marked the beginning of a divine mission. On the feast of Corpus Christi in 1675, Margaret experienced the pinnacle moment. Before the Blessed Sacrament, Jesus showed her his open heart, a symbol of the overflowing love that had been exhausted for humanity. This divine and moving act appointed her as the messenger of the Sacred Heart. Margaret's life, marked by prayer and suffering, was guided by her devotion to Jesus. Even an illness that bedridden her for 4 years became a testament to the Virgin's miraculous intervention in her life. The revelations continued, and Margaret shared the practice of devotion to the heart of Jesus, overcoming trials and resistance. Under the guidance of Jesuit Saint Claude de la Colombière, her visions became part of a lasting spiritual legacy. Today, the Order of the Visitation, founded by Saint Francis de Sales, keeps the flame of this devotion alive in 18 monasteries in Spain, including the Monastery of the Visitation in Granada. The devotion to the Sacred Heart, propagated by Saint Margaret, extends across the country, reminding us of the infinite love expressed in the divine heart of Jesus. The story of Saint Margaret Mary Alacoque, canonized on May 13, 1920, invites us to draw closer to children and share with them the importance of loving Jesus and others, a love that transcends time and is expressed in the Sacred Heart. Saint Francis Xavier. In the 16th century, a man was born whose heart overflowed with the magnitude necessary to answer the call of Jesus Christ and undertake the mission of bringing faith to the remotest corners of the world. Saint Francis Xavier, known as the giant of missionary history, stood as a colossus in the propagation of faith, so much so that Pope Pius VI designated him the official patron of foreign missions. This intrepid evangelizer, born in 1506 in the Castle of Xavier in Navarre, Spain, was the youngest in his family. His destiny took shape during his studies at the University of Paris, where he earned his licentiate in 1528. God's providential plan unfolded as he encountered Peter Faber and the enigmatic Ignatius of Loyola. Ignatius's influence, with his call to not lose oneself in gaining the world, initially challenging for Francis, became a flame that consumed his pride and vanity. Ignatius guided Francis through the spiritual exercises, a special retreat that transformed his heart and soul, where he understood that a heart so great and a soul so noble cannot be content with ephemeral earthly honors. Your ambition must be the glory that lasts eternally. Thus, he joined the first followers of Saint Ignatius, founding the Society of Jesus at Montmartre in 1534. Together, they took vows of poverty and initially planned to begin their mission in the Holy Land, although they eventually redirected their path to Rome. There, they collaborated on drafting the constitutions of the Society of Jesus, solidifying their commitment to total dependence on the Pope. In Goa, India, the Basilica of Bom Jesus still venerates his incorrupt body. Saint John Neumann. Imagine the extraordinary life of John Nepomucene Neumann, a man whose destiny intertwined continents and cultures in the 19th century. Born in 1811 in Preußitz, part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, his early philosophical studies inclined him toward the natural sciences. Although he initially considered medicine, his mother's persistence guided him towards the seminary, where his calling to missions was ignited. After studying theology in Prague, John longed to be ordained but faced closed doors in his homeland. Bohemia was saturated with priests, and no diocese was interested in taking more. Yet John, undeterred, embarked on a transformative journey. With determination, he learned English while working in a factory and wrote to bishops in the United States. Eventually, the Bishop of New York agreed to ordain him, marking the beginning of a journey that would lead him to a vast and challenging parish in western New York. Without a bell tower or paved roads, his church was humble, but John dedicated his time to traversing mountains and villages, bringing Mass to kitchen tables, and teaching with tireless zeal. However, his longing for community led him to the Redemptorists, becoming the first priest of the congregation in America. From his work in Baltimore and Pittsburgh to becoming the Redemptorist visitor in the United States, John stood out for his piety, zeal, and kindness. Founder of Catholic schools in his diocese, he paved the way for the Catholic school system in the United States. Becoming Bishop of Philadelphia in 1852, John Neumann continued his tireless work, organizing a diocesan system of Catholic schools and building more than 80 churches, including the majestic Cathedral of Saints Peter and Paul. His legacy, ranging from founding the Sisters of the Third Order of St. Francis to his role in proclaiming the dogma of the Immaculate Conception, reveals a man of small stature but monumental impact. John Nepomucene Neumann, canonized in 1977, remains a beacon of inspiration and dedication in the history of the Catholic Church. His incorrupt body rests in the cathedral named after him in Philadelphia. Saint Thérèse of the Child Jesus. The life of Saint Thérèse of the Child Jesus is a testament to love and faith that transcends even death. After her passing, her body, instead of undergoing natural decomposition, remained incorrupt, serving as a living symbol of her connection with the divine. This extraordinary phenomenon, preserved over the years, continues to astonish both the faithful and the curious, reminding them of the eternal presence of her radiant spirit. The incorrupt body of Saint Thérèse is more than a mystery. It is a tangible reminder of the promise of eternal life for those who believe. Her name was Marie-Françoise Thérèse Martin, but the world knows her as Saint Thérèse of the Child Jesus and the Holy Face. Born in Alençon, Normandy on January 2, 1873, her brief yet intense life left an indelible mark on human history. Thérèse grew up in a deeply religious family. Her father, Louis Martin, and her mother, Zélie Martin, instilled in her values of love, humility, and devotion. From an early age, Thérèse felt an irresistible attraction to God. At 16, she entered the convent of the Discalced Carmelites in the city of Lisieux, dedicating her life entirely to God. Thérèse was not a mystic in the traditional sense, but her spirituality was imbued with simplicity and love. She experienced visions that connected her to spiritual childhood. She believed that anyone could approach God with the humility and trust of a child. Her little way of spiritual childhood became her legacy. Thérèse held that although she could not perform great deeds, she could carry out small acts of love every day. Her daily life became a path to sainthood. The first miracle in her life occurred when she was just a child. At 9 years old, she fell gravely ill, but a prayer before the statue of Our Lady of Victories healed her instantly. This event marked her life and led her to deeply love the Mother of Jesus. After her death in 1897, the miracles continued. The shower of roses, promised by Thérèse, manifested on numerous occasions. People worldwide experienced her intercession. Little Queen Fouquet, a blind 4-year-old girl, was healed at her tomb. During World War I, soldiers in the trenches trusted in their little flower and experienced her protection. Upon her death, her body was exhumed. Although not completely incorrupt, her face and hands were preserved. Thérèse's left hand, cut off by Father Geronimo Gracian, is kept in a reliquary in the Church of La Merced in Ronda, Spain. This fragment of her body remains a sign of her sanctity.